So sometimes you can speak truth to power, and sometimes power shuts your voice down. I think in my meanderings on authority and my relationship, my combative relationship with it over my lifetime, I have to add that sometimes when you have integrity, it puts you outside of the power system. Sometimes you definitely get in the way because while the relationship between, authority and its subjects, in my mind, should be a two-way communication. Obviously, there's a limit to how much communication authority can receive usefully, but when it really is just like a one-on-one, a boss and an employee kind of situation, then it really does beg the question, well, why isn't there just good communication when there needs to be? And I think that what happens a lot of the time is that people in a position of authority, their egos get ruffled. They're like, hey, I've earned this place in authority. I shouldn't have to answer to anybody who's lower than me. And therefore, no, I'm not going to respond in a listening manner. I'm just going to use my power forcefully to swish away that voice, just to end the dialogue. It's like, well, I can do this, so this is what I'm going to do. So when people who are of lower authority question that authority, it usually causes an ego reaction that authority may use power or force to stifle that voice. And that's why there's such a problem, right? That's why you need to have unions in order to get power to negotiate, because otherwise they just kind of boom, 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 just kind of pound you out. And that's not acceptable in my mind. Like, I think that ultimately, as human beings, we need to create systems and ways to get good and clear communication, because sometimes it's the lowest man on the totem pole that has the most important insight into what's going on with the whole company or the whole organization. And if that person's voice is not heard, well, then they're not going to necessarily learn what they need to learn to solve the problems. And that's really what it's about, is solving problems for the whole group, right? I've had multiple experiences where I tried to bring up a problem to an authority figure, and it was just thrown back in my face. Like, how dare you question me? And I think that one lesson is just like, be careful writing letters, because letters don't necessarily come off with the emotional inflection you wanted. There's an expression that conversations build relationships, emails maintain relationships, and text messages kill relationships. And I think it's really all about relationship. This is like the really important piece is the connection. And so if like trust is broken or there's some sort of issue with that relationship, well, then the business, the company, the organization can't run the way it's supposed to run. So you do need this two-way street feedback loop of information so that both, all parties can work together to make a better thing happen. But because authority doesn't have to, they can use force instead. Obviously, employees can quit instead. That's their form of force, right? Boss can fire somebody. But because there's this sort of unequal power situation, seemingly, you often get into these situations where people learn not to speak up for themselves, not to tell the truth, because it'd be easier to lay low until some boss is, someone else brings it to the boss, and so I'm not going to get blamed for telling the truth. And that's your integrity, right? But also there's having integrity and speaking it so loudly that you just piss people off. Or essentially you do it in a way that's emotionally embroiled so that it makes more antagonistic sort of relationships than otherwise. I think that most authority figures kind of need you to do like a curtsy or a bow of allegiance or sort of demure respect for the authority status, the position that you're talking to. Ingratiate yourself and then speak to them about the problem that you're having. And even though that seems like it shouldn't be necessary, it kind of is, because human beings have egos, and I think authority adds to the weight of that ego. So you do have to kind of be diplomatic. It's not just playing politics per se, it's being diplomatic with human egos, with human personality, and understanding all of that is important in doing business. I do find that overall, however, when authority chooses to use force instead of communication, when it doesn't respect the employees or the lower power people in the organization, that force is effectively creating trauma on people and the organization that will have side effects. And it's also squashing open dialogue so that the truth isn't really, you're destroying the culture for truth too. So every time authority does not choose to listen, and especially listen closely to everyone else as much as possible, it creates that animosity, that relationship of distrust. I think in a sense, even though equality is not a universal thing necessarily, it's a value we try to champion in America and other places, but it's not exactly, it's always doing battle with meritocracy. However, human egos are kind of equal in that they all think I'm better than other people. And if you push me down, I will react retaliatorily. That's kind of the universal equality factor is psychology, that we need to be respected. We need to be given respect in order to not feel attacked. And so authority needs to do extra work to show that it's listening, to pay attention to what its constituents are asking for. Can't do just what the constituents say, because it's got to listen to all the constituents and consider a lot of other factors the constituents may not be considering. But if it's not listening, then it's doing a poor job of being an authority. It basically ruins that communication cycle, suppresses free speech. And I think this is what we get. This is what we get. And I think that even in the current era where we've got, vaccine mandates and stuff, there may be really good reasons for vaccine mandates, but the trauma that's being created by enforcing them is creating further distrust in authority in a time we're already at a low point for trust in authority. And so those are real costs that we're going to face down the road.